Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 93 of our Reddit series. This one's going to be a little bit more entitled parents, and I know you're going to love this one. Do me a favor and just ignore the fact that I sound like an absolute chainsaw. I am actually better, my throat's just a little bit funny, I'm not too sure, but a quick thank you for all the support. I love you all and appreciate you more than you know. Now sit back, relax, and get annoyed at some entitled parents. So I was new to the area and should have suspected something when right upon moving in, entitled mum was on my doorstep asking if I babysat. Yup, turns out there was a shortage of teenage girls in the area who wanted babysitting money. It was country club territory and the majority didn't do work. The entitled mum was thrilled to find out that I babysat and scheduled herself a date night that week. She agreed to my rate and I was happy to have a customer so quickly in my new town, at least for a brief period of time. Her son was the kind of kid who liked to pull the wings off insects. I should probably Google him to find his Florida man story. He was beyond unruly and he hurled his dinner at me because I wouldn't give him cookies. He kicked and hit me over me insisting that he needed to put on pajamas, and he threw an absolute screaming tantrum on the floor when it was bedtime because he wanted to stay up and play video games. He was an overall nightmare and it was blindingly obvious that he was used to these tactics working. I survived the night, but by the time entitled mum got home, her son hadn't finished having his bedtime tantrum on the living room floor. Tiny me was not capable nor interested in trying to physically force a kicking and hitting kid to do anything. He'd even threatened me with biting, so there he wailed and pounded the carpet. I figured that he'd tucker himself out eventually or the entitled mum could deal with what she'd spawned. At 8, he was way too old for that kind of behaviour. Well, when she got home, I learned where he got it from. As soon as she got in the door, the entitled mum threw a screaming fit at me that her son wasn't in bed. When she got done yelling at me, she refused to pay. I didn't deserve to be paid apparently because I hadn't successfully gotten him to bed on time. Why did she even hire a babysitter if she still had to do all the work? She deserved a break from her son's bedtime antics. I was decidedly unamused by the not paying, but she wouldn't budge. So, I took the remote control for her television hostage and went home. Then I told everybody I met what she'd done, and unsurprisingly, the entitled mum had a history of refusing to pay contractors, house cleaners, and babysitters. She had a lien against her house and everything. Given there were fewer babysitters than babysitting jobs on offer in the area, she didn't have a lot of luck hiring one again. She did eventually come for her remote and paid up. Then, the damn fool tried to hire me again. Not a chance. I mean, you know what they say, to get rich, sometimes you gotta cut a couple of corners. If that means completely ripping people off and being a horrible human being, then so be it. No, obviously I kid, but these entitled parents just don't ever seem to get any better. I was away sick, not making videos for a few days, and I genuinely thought that I might come back with less entitled parent stories, or maybe that they learned from their mistakes in the past. But I guess they never learn because these entitled parents just don't change. I know that some people are probably reading the title and gasping. How could you hate Mother's Day? Well, it's simple. I hate my mother. I've written several stories about her already, and this is the one about how I wasn't even able to express the negative feelings that her horrible treatment brought out in me. Linda, which is what I call her as I stopped thinking her of as a mum years ago, would often slam the door when she was angry, but if I did it, I'd get spanked. She was such a hypocrite. If I said something wasn't fair, she'd say I was talking back and I was spanked. She would also sometimes slap me across the face if I did something she didn't like. Yelling and screaming at me, calling me names, swearing at me, was all in her arsenal of A+ parenting. One time, she had been nasty to me and I'd gone to my room and was laying in bed in the dark crying. My back was to the door and suddenly I hear it fling open and she yells, "What are you crying about?" I froze, as I knew better than to say that I was crying because of her. I'd probably just get yelled at more. I didn't know what to say or do, so I just froze in place. Linda snorted and said something like, "Whatever." I can't remember exactly what it was before she left. I went back to crying, but this time in silence. I soon learned that it was always better to try and cry in silence so she couldn't hear me. She'd either get annoyed at my tears or get some perverse expression of satisfaction that she'd already upset me that much. Unlike other children who would cry loudly when hurt and were offered hugs and words of comfort, I was forced to suffer in silence. I wasn't able to show any anger or pain, so I started taking it out on my toys. My mother and grandmother would both wonder why I damaged them so much, even though it's a textbook case of what psychological damage children do when they have no other outlet. When I turned 12, I was finally big enough and old enough to defend myself, at least somewhat physically. When Linda tried to slap me, I jerked to the side so that she hit my shoulder instead. I slapped her back across her own shoulder and glared at her. She was shocked. It was my first time being able to do this, and after that, everything changed. All my anger that I never got to show came out after that. We had many days of screaming fights as I told her what a terrible mother and person she was and how much I hated her. She only ever hit me a couple more times after this, after I was an adult, and she never did again the second time after I threatened to call the cops. The other kinds of abuse, however, never stopped. Verbal and emotional abuse flowed from her mouth, and she even stole most of my money. SSI money for disabled people, no less. Until I wised up and opened my own bank account, that is. To this very day, I have trouble expressing my emotions. I tend to either hold everything in or everything comes boiling out. I hate confrontation and I have terrible social anxiety. I have trust issues and I take a small handful of pills every day to help control my bipolar disorder. I was also told that I have PTSD and was in major therapy for a long time. I still flinch if I go to a store and hear a parent yelling at their child. I cut off all contact with my family 5 years ago, but every year around this time, whenever I go and see advertising for Mother's Day everywhere, it reminds me how every year I would have to give Linda a present and card and smile and pretend that she was a wonderful mother just so I wouldn't get screamed at. All of this while inside I was seething with rage. To all the good mothers out there who treat their children right, who give them hugs and love when they are sad, who teach them how to express their anger properly without hurting anybody, who are there for their kids and show them what real love and trust is all about, thank you. Man, I don't know if it was just me or not, but that last sentence or that last paragraph in particular hits hard. Honestly, it just makes you think how lucky you are growing up with parents who really care about you and aren't like the entitled parents that we read about nearly every day in these stories. I know I say this a lot, but I really do feel sorry for the children of entitled parents. It's like by default they're given a backward start in life and they don't have the opportunities that other kids have just because their parents act the way they do. It sucks because these people are so helpless and they don't have a choice what family they're born into. And honestly, I just hope that parents can learn to be better for their children's sake. I just got new neighbors next door and unfortunately, they are the epitome of entitlement. First off, the entitled mum is a full-fledged Karen with the haircut, 3 brats in tow, and her husband lost his testicles years ago when he married the witch. I only met them in passing, and my first encounter, I heard a screaming fit coming from one of the entitled kids, and at that moment, I realized that I'm in for it big time with these people. So, it was a beautiful, warm, sunny afternoon, and I decided that it would be lovely to have dinner outside on the deck. We chose a simple choice of pizza from our favorite local parlor. I set us up and we all sit down to enjoy our nice, quiet family dinner when I hear screeching and screams coming from the fence about 10 feet away. Entitled Kid 2 was beginning an epic tantrum because he saw that we were having pizza on our deck and I guess he wanted some. We tried to ignore it until I hear the entitled mum come out and take him inside where we continue to hear screaming and arguing. Next thing I see is Commando Karen mode coming out of the gate and walking right into our yard with her brat following behind her, wiping his boogers on his sleeve. So Karen says to me, "My son wants some pizza," and starts coming up the steps to sit him down. I said, "Excuse me, but you're interrupting our private dinner as a family." And in disbelief, Karen says, "You better give him some pizza or he will keep screaming until you do." Just then, the entitled kid's eyes light up, hearing what Karen had said and realizing he can get pizza if he starts screaming again, so he throws himself backwards on the decks, theoretically wailing, and his head hits the deck, which caused actual wailing. Karen becomes irate at this point and screams at us, "This is all your fault. I'm calling the cops and a lawyer. You better pray my baby isn't brain damaged after this. Also, I'm taking the pizza with me. That's the least you can do to make this right." So Karen picks up the entitled kid, who is not hurt at all, just pissed off he didn't get what he wanted, and his tantrum didn't result in pizza. I stood up to block her from coming up and smirked at her, trying not to laugh, which infuriated her even more, and she started in with more threats to call the cops. That's when my dear husband came out and informed her that he is a cop, which is why I was smirking. My teenage son, who is the size of a professional wrestler, jumps up and starts running them off when she decides to dash back to her cave to hide. I haven't seen her since. I'm assuming she came to realize that my husband is indeed a cop and that she made a huge asshole out of herself and now she has to dodge us every time she comes or goes. I'm sure it's not the last time I'll hear from Karen. Summer is only just beginning and there will be many more pizzas on the back deck. You know, despite everything and this person being a typical Karen, this story could have gone a lot better had she have just been a little bit more polite in the first place. This actually could have been a really good opportunity for her to meet her neighbors, make some new friends, and who knows, maybe in the future they would have invited the kid over for pizza on the back deck. But instead, she had to bring out her inner Karen-ness, show her entitlement, and now they probably hate her for the rest of their life. You just can't win when you're an entitled parent. And quite frankly, you don't deserve to. This isn't my story, but a police officer's. He came into my school a few years ago to talk about us sexting and had this delightful story. So basically, if you're under the age of 18, you're legally a child. So any indecent photo of somebody under the age of 18 counts as child pornography. Even if the photo is of yourself, you can still be charged with possession of child pornography. Quick PSA, over. The police officer received a complaint from a girl that this entitled kid had her nudes on his phone. The police officer goes to the entitled kid's school, talks to him, and asks to see his phone to check if he has the girl's nudes. The entitled kid refuses because he knows his rights, and so the school are forced to contact the entitled kid's dad. The entitled dad, not surprisingly, also refuses because he also knows his rights. The police officer is having none of it. He asks the entitled dad who pays the phone bill, and of course, the entitled dad does. This means that technically, the phone is under the entitled dad's name, and so belongs to him. The police officer then informs the entitled dad that if any nudes are found, then it's him who will be charged for possession, therefore making him a sex offender. This makes the entitled dad reconsider some things and quickly hands over the phone. To no one's surprise, the girl's nudes are there, and so the police officer deletes them. It could have been over so much quicker had the entitled kid just complied, but the entitled's got to entitle, I guess. I have no idea what happened to the entitled kid or the entitled dad, but unfortunately, the entitled kid sent the photo to 3 of his friends, all in different schools. I just hope the police officer was able to delete them all before they got spread further. Just FYI, and this was at the start of the post, so I probably should have mentioned it previously, but this took place in the UK, so in the UK, police don't actually need a warrant to search phones like they would in the US and a lot of other countries. But that aside, I'm pretty sure one of the most recent Entitled Parents episodes we did, or perhaps it was one of the revenge subreddits, I'm not too sure, but it featured something very similar to this. And to this day, it still astounds me that people don't know that having any kind of indecent photos of somebody under the age of 18 on your phone, regardless of how old you are, makes you liable for having those photos on there. I don't know, but to me, this either seems like it should be common sense or something that should be taught in school, because people get caught out with this stuff not knowing, and it's just stupid. If you have these photos, just delete them. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm just going to take a second to plug a couple of my social medias, including our Discord server. I do have a Twitter and an Instagram if you want to follow me on both of those. They are both at Bumfris, and feel free to send me a message and I'll do my best to respond. I also just want to take a second to say thank you so much for all the love lately, all of the comments, the likes, the subscribers, just the fact that you guys tune in and watch my videos every day. It really does make my day. Every single one of you is the backbone of this channel, and I really cannot express how much I appreciate that. Without you guys, this channel would be nothing, and I love making these videos for you guys, and I love the fact that you enjoy them. So on that note, I will wrap things up for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to take a second again to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Entitled Parents. Bye.